coming to everybody to talk about how to get children to talk. Actually, I'm gonna just help everybody to lead this discussion today. It's really gonna be more of a roundtable. So we'll be looking to everybody for their ideas. I'm sure everybody here has probably mediated at least one juvenile case and has encountered perhaps you've never mediated a juvenile case? Oh, well, have you talked to juveniles? Do you have kids at home?
Never had kids, never had children.
Oh, wow.
Never
Okay.
had one year.
Nieces, nephews?
No sisters and brothers. Oh, right.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, but ask her where she worked.
Did you work with children?
No.
No? Okay. Okay. Well, then maybe this will be more of a learning experience for you. Before we actually begin, I have a little bit of business to take care of. First of all, I'm supposed to remind you that next month we have a holiday gathering on December 6th, so please plan on attending. It's going to be here from 6 to 8, and for those of people who are good bakers and would like to bring some cookies for people, please do so. But please don't feel it's necessary to bring them. Just bring yourselves. Also, I understand that there's been some information sent out regarding the year 2000 continuing education plans. I was looking at this and it looks really good. They've got some really good ideas, so please give them feedback on this. They're always looking to see what people are interested in seeing here. I know that in looking through evals from mediators that this is something that's routinely on the feedback from mediators, that they want to have some kind of program about how to get children to talk during the mediations. And so this actually comes from all of your feedback. So why don't we start by just going around the table really quickly and giving your name and talking about your background and what you're hoping to do here tonight. If you also have any special kind of training in juvenile type work, that would be interesting too. Here, why don't we start with
Well, I'm Michael Nathanson, and I've been mediating here for about 15 years, and I've done a lot of juvenile cases, and at one point in time, CCR was doing about a year and a half stuff for the child abuse and neglect court, and we had I think a 3-day training for how to do child abuse and neglect that was put on by, I think it was the CBA and the child abuse and neglect court.
Okay.
So we did mediations there, so I did some of those in the child abuse and neglect court also, and then I do juvenile mediations. I have them here.
Okay, and were the juveniles involved in the abuse and neglect mediations as well, or was it just the adults?
Just the adults.
Okay.
It was, but they were done in the court, and they were done with, so everybody was there. I mean, you had everybody at the table. You had the state's attorney, you had DCFS, you had the lawyer for DCFS, you had the lawyer for the various parties, so you'd have mom and her lawyer and dad and his lawyer. There could be an adopted parent, and that they would have a lawyer, so it was a huge mess because everybody at the table was a mandated reporter. So.
Okay. But no kids. The one it was really about. Okay.
Well, but in a lot of cases, well, in some cases you're talking about infants.
Okay. Thanks. Wait. Oh, Dwight, should we pass you and come back to you? You're done chewing.
Okay. My name is Dwayne Dobrowolski. I went through the course here in February, and I've only had a couple juvenile mediations and a couple short ones because they resolve very fast, and so I don't really have that much experience in that per se.
My name is Jane Brown, and I completed my mediator training here at the center in May. And I've had 2 cases, one of which was a juvenile help me do a good job on Thursday. But I've only had one.
Okay. Okay, good.
Carlos Middleton. I've been with the center for about 5 years, and I have had the opportunity to mediate juvenile cases. But also, too, prior to coming to the center, I'm retired Air Force, so during that period of time, I was a judo instructor with kids. So I have a pretty good idea on how to establish a rapport with kids, you know, by building their confidence and so forth, and trying to get them to trust you.
Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll be,
So that's about it,
so you'll have some really good ideas to talk
hopefully.
about tonight. Good.
Hopefully.
Okay. Jen?
My name is Jen Shack, and I went through mediation training here in March, I believe. April? Okay, April. I don't remember anymore. And I've only had one juvenile mediation. My last 4 have been canceled in a row. So basically, I'm looking for more information.
Okay, I'm Sarah Alexander. I went through the training in April. I have not had any juvenile cases, so I'm here to try to get some information about how to, how to proceed once I get.
Okay, great. And Dick, do you want to just introduce yourself really quick and your background?
I'm Dick Schufeld, and been a volunteer here since 1995. And I've had some of the juvenile cases, and they've been demanding.
Oh, good. And so with all your cases, you'll have some really good ideas to share tonight?
I have some things to talk about.
Okay. Okay, that's good. And Rabbi Gordon, do you want to just introduce yourself really quickly? We're just
Sure.
going around the table.
I'm Jamie Gordon. I'm a rabbi also, an attorney by training, and I've been a volunteer here for about a year, and I've had a handful of juvenile cases.
Good. Before we begin, actually, Susan had thought it might be a good idea to kind of go through the background of how the juvenile court cases get to us and what are the different outcomes of what can happen. I know a lot of times when we're briefing people, some questions do come up. And to also talk a little bit about, as you can see on the front page, balance and restorative justice. Balance and restorative justice is basically a new law which was passed January 1st of 1998. There was a new Juvenile Justice Reform Act took effect. And in this new act, the act includes a purpose and policy section which adopts the balance and restorative justice approach. And now there's 2 key concepts within the balance and restorative justice model. The first concept is that when a juvenile commits a crime, not only is the victim hurt, but also the community is hurt as well. Secondly, the balance restorative justice model takes it at a balanced approach, which kind of goes to what Michael's question was before, balanced versus unbalanced. The juvenile justice system believes that it should give equal treatment to 3 components. And you'll see that those 3 components are actually signified by this equilateral triangle. The first component is that the juvenile justice system should ensure the public safety. Secondly, the juvenile justice system should hold the juvenile who commits the crime accountable to the victims and the community. And third, the juvenile justice system should provide competency to these children so that they can become productive members of their community and hopefully not go out there and reoffend. Now, there's a lot of different models in the whole balance restorative justice approach, and guess what? Mediation happens to be a big one there, which is great because it's lending the whole mediation movement and what CCR is doing a lot of credibility, and it's getting us a lot of exposure within the system. And so, even though this law went into effect in 1998, we've actually been doing this with the courts since 1992. Now, while we've been doing this since 1992, there are little things that we were doing that could possibly be changed. If you think back to what we've been doing in the victim offender mediations, generally we focus more on the victim and the offender, right? And a lot of times the whole concept of the community sometimes gets left out. And so that's something that hopefully as we get more into this whole system and it becomes more known, that's a component that we can start to add more, or that the parties actually can add more. So some examples of that would be, like, let's say there's a minor arrested for criminal damage to property. And let's say generally what people want money, they want to be reimbursed. Let's say $50 for the cost of paint. Well, so you're taking care of the accountability, but where's the competency for the minor? And how is the community going to come into that? So things like maybe community service where the minor will go and clean up a park. Or that will not only affect the community, but that will also teach the child competency, because by cleaning a park, going out and painting, or doing something like that, they're also going to be gaining the competency. So when you're doing your next juvenile court mediations, try to think about that in the back of your mind, the fact that there are those three components out there, and see if there's any ways that you can start as a mediator to bring all of those components into the mediation. And maybe we can discuss things like that as well tonight. Okay, does anybody have any questions on the three components of balance and restorative justice, or ideas about it?
Well, I do about the community.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because certainly when we've done cases,
Mhm.
those sorts of things have been put in the community, put in.
Right.
But if there's an emphasis on that, and if that's one way to think about this, that adds a third party,
Right.
it's totally outside the model. The third party's not represented. So, for example, how do we know that painting or moving a graffiti is in the community's interest?
Is or isn't?
Is or isn't. I mean, how would we know that since the community's not represented?
You're right, and a lot of times you won't. Cookie and I just did a case together where there was a library which had about $10,000 worth of damage done to it by 8 juveniles. So not only did we have the 8 juveniles there and a member from the library, but we also had people from the community there, represented by the CAPS people, the Chicago Alternative to Policing, and then also Friends of the Library, the community members who had helped to build up this library. They were also represented at this mediation, and they had a voice in it. So that's an example of where we actually had the community come into it and make suggestions and talk about how they've been affected. But unfortunately, you are right. A lot of times the community component is missing.
But how can you say the community component? You're speaking of groups. What about the kid himself or the victim? They're part of the community as well.
Right.
Okay,
but
so what I'm saying is, as a mediator, I would be able to interject the aspects of the community as far as maybe bringing it up as an option for consideration.
okay, well,
You see
what do you
I'm
mean you would be interjecting? Because under our model, we really wouldn't
Well, in other words,
do that.
you just stated before, Susie, that we should take these three components into consideration in the mediation process.
Right.
Okay. And if one of them is left out, then what? We must interject or either mention.
I don't know if I would say interject
Okay,
it, but
what's
those
the-
are things that we should all start to think about and try to brainstorm ways to try to bring the community into
Right.
it.
So let's not quibble over semantics. So, our point simply is that everyone there is a part of the community. So what are you saying, that the
Right,
community
well,
is
I'm
not being
saying that
represented?
the community goes beyond just the victim and the offender.
True,
It's
true.
the community as a whole, and a lot of times the community as a whole is missing in the mediation.
Okay, so in other words, if no one is there representing a certain special interest group or whatever, therefore that component is left out of the
You're right,
mediation?
it
Or
could very well
should
be.
be left out?
I'm sorry?
Or should be left out?
Should be, I'm not saying it should be, I'm just saying it is.
That's my point.
Mhm.
That's my point. So I think that's a judgmental call there, is that we, as mediators, I feel, should not just arbitrarily say because no one is there to represent the community, therefore that option should not be discussed, brainstormed, or whatever. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Is how, in other words, what can the kid do to redeem him or herself? What can you do?
To repair the community.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, so Michael says that there's been occasions when there was no one from the community there.
Well, I would say even in Susie's case that she didn't have anybody from the community.
Say what?
I think even in her case, she didn't have anybody from the community.
Right, okay.
That'd be my view.
Okay, so I'm still kind of puzzled. I mean, why would we just arbitrarily, because no one is there to represent the community, say that that should not be a part of the discussion or
No, all I
brainstorming
said
process or whatever?
No, all I said was that if they're not there,
Okay,
how do we represent them if they're not there?
Right.
Because in our model, we normally don't make agreements between folks who aren't physically present at the mediation. That's all I meant. I mean, not, whether they should or shouldn't be there, I don't know.
Okay.
But all I'm saying is that if they're not there, then how can we possibly represent them?
How does it
Well,
happen?
we
Exactly,
don't
okay.
represent anybody.
right.
How does it happen not in a mediation but in court when this issue arises? How does a judge deal with that?
With, you know, I don't know.
No, but
They
there-
don't deal with court.
No, but if you're having, in other words, in court, you're not having the victims representing themselves. Victims are bringing a complaint to the state, and the state's attorney, the assistant state's attorney on behalf of the state's attorney on behalf of the community is really stepping in on behalf of the community. Here you don't have that. You know, if I may interject that, perhaps you have then, with the role of the guardians who are coming in on behalf of the juveniles, they're then seeing, especially if it's the accusers coming in, saying what they feel is in the best interest of the community in terms of repairing it, and hopefully the parents or the guardians of the offenders are also looking out on behalf of the community too. But you're missing that. In other words,
Yeah.
the prosecuting attorney is not there, who's officially there on behalf of the community.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was alluding to. Yeah.
Right, the prosecuting attorney, I mean, that's the public safety part. That's what happens in court. But the,
Well, public safety, but also what's in the best interest of the community. In other words, who's to say that community service or other things are in the best interest? When you have it prosecuted through the court system, that is part of the role of the state's attorney. In other words, to argue on behalf of, to advocate on behalf of the community in that regard.
Well, I wonder, I mean, probably, maybe some of the state's attorneys do that, maybe some of them just care about getting the case done too.
no, but what you're saying is that that's actually an official role, is to,
Right.
whether they do a good job or not.
I mean, here you're bringing in, if you're bringing in the CCR's model of the mediation, the mediator in certain ways, should we even be looking out, quote unquote, for the community? Or are we leaving that up to the parties involved?
Right.
True.
Right, and we're not there to look out for the community.
Right.
We're not there to look out for anybody, we're just there to help the parties. But what I'm saying is there is a push to bring not only the victim and the offender, but the community within this whole system. And not only in mediations or any forms of alternative dispute resolution that's offered, but also in the court procedures itself. The court has, if it goes in front of a judge, the judge is going to have to see that all of these components are going to be dealt with in each case.
Oh, you mean by law? No.
Yes, that's what this whole law is about. So let's say that this kid goes into court, the state's attorney is going to have to say, you know, well, this is what we're looking for, and this is how each of these components is going to be covered. Yes, Carlos?
Okay, so, I mean, my objective here is, based on the training that we're receiving, is to try to do the best job possible. And you mentioned the various components that make up this model.
Right.
Okay.
And
So,
it's just to give you a
I
background on the
understand,
new
I
law we're
understand
dealing
that, I
with.
understand that. But my concern is that once I enter into a mediation, and these components are supposed to be a part of that mediation, a consideration there is.
It would be nice.
Okay, exactly. So that
But it may not be.
I understand that each case is different.
Right.
Okay, but also too, in the cases where this is applicable,
Okay.
then if someone is not there specifically representing the community, what do we do as mediators to try and get that component into the mediation process?
Well, how do we deal with anything else?
Okay.
We ask
All right.
questions, we
So we're
reality
not barred
test,
from doing that then?
depending on how you do it.
Okay,
Let's put
fine.
it that
Okay,
way.
fine, okay, all right, all right.
Yeah, I guess what I'm confused about is the business about representing the community.
Mhm.
Is there an administrative case management problem to be sure that community representatives are there to execute this under the law and within mediation? And, to be sure that that party's always represented.
Mhm.
That is, that you can't go forward with a mediation with just the
No,
parents
that-
and the
no, no,
kids.
no, 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 no.
But I'm saying theoretically, I'm creating a construct.
Yeah.
I'm saying that what?
Okay, you're going way beyond my whole concept of what this looked like tonight, but
No.
okay, go
Well,
on,
no, then
Michael.
I-
No, go on.
I'm
But
just saying,
that-
if we want the community represented, I can
Right.
see it doing it two different ways.
Mhm.
One is as a case management approach to say, okay, we have this the way we used to do it.
Okay.
But now we have this new law, which means it's CCR's responsibility to reach out and bring community members into that mediation.
Okay, and it hasn't reached to that point yet,
Okay,
saying it's
good
our
point.
Yeah,
responsibility.
that's
Yeah.
one concept.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
The other concept is somehow to change the model and bring it into the actual mediation where there are no community representatives. That, I
Mhm.
mean, those are the two possibilities I can think of. I don't know if
Or
there's a
just leave,
third.
well, three, or
Okay.
either just leave it out at
Or
period.
leave it out, but she doesn't want to leave it out.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right,
Right, we don't want to do that, but.
exactly.
And those are all very good ideas. And like I said, it's going a little bit beyond what I really wanted to talk about tonight. I just kind of wanted to give you guys a feel for this new law and to let you know about it. Is there anything else
And
that?
so, in practice, yet we really haven't started to deal with this a lot, right? That
Not a
third
lot.
component.
I personally disagree with what Michael said. I think that there was the community representation in my mediation. And I feel that in other cases too we've done, there's representation of the community as well.
The ones that I've done have never included that.
That-
It's
and that
always
could
been
be-
just the victim.
And so that's something that, I'm fully aware that we need to work on.
Okay.
Okay?
Very good.
Move
Thank
on.
you.
Let's move on now. Should we go really quickly through how a case gets to us? Or do we really?
No, please.
Okay. Okay, so we got this handy dandy little flow chart here on the last page. Oh, you don't have the handy dandy little flow chart, Kelly. If you want to just look on somebody else's for right now, and I can get one for you later. Basically, let's just kind of go through how a case would go through the system. First of all, you start out with the incident. Let's just go with criminal damage to property. A minor goes and spray paints a garage. What happens next? The victim calls the police, makes a report, and the minor is arrested. At that point, two things can happen when the police pick this kid up. The police can either decide to adjust this kid, which basically means they're going to deal with it on their own and sweep the kid out. Or the police can decide to refer that case to the state's attorney's office. Now, with this new law passed in 1998, there's a new change with the whole station adjustment system, and that is that police are only allowed a limited number of station adjustments to give out per kid. So what that means for state's attorney's office is that they have received an increase in cases because police are no longer able to screen out a lot of the cases they would want to. What that also means is the state's attorneys are getting a lot of cases that they really don't want, cases that shouldn't be going to court, that they don't want to deal with for whatever reason, and so a lot of those cases are now getting filtered into diversion programs like CCRs. And that's why you'll notice we're getting a lot of retail theft cases now, because before the shoplifting cases, a lot of those were just screened out. You can't do that anymore. So, once a case is referred to the state's attorney's office, the state's attorney then has a few choices on what they want to do. They can either decide to screen it out themselves, decide we're not going to file this, we can't deal with this, and then they just, put it off to the side. They could choose to prosecute a case, to file it in front of a judge, or they can choose to divert it to a diversion program like mediation. They have several other programs. There's another program which does a quasi-mediation program. There's also scholarship and guidance programs. There's a program called CAPS, which is not Chicago Alternative to Policing, but it's something else. Can't remember. But it involves a lot of interaction with the children. A lot of the problems with the old diversion programs is that they actually just focused on the juvenile. They didn't bring the component of the victim into it like we do, and they didn't really have the community aspect either. But let's say that a case does get diverted to the center. Yes?
Question, is there any limit on to how many, have they limited the number of diversions that the state's attorney can make? So it could,
They could divert
so if
as
they get a
many as-
lot of them that they don't want from the police because they're not that, they're fairly minor, they can.
They can divert it over to another program, or they can screen it out. Yeah, there's no limit. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to screen my cases. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to take everything that I'm given. I might decide it's not appropriate, and so send it back. And then they can deal with it at that point. But once we get a case sent to mediation, what we do is I'll call the victim, explain mediation, get them to decide they're going to come here. After they've said, yeah, I want to mediate, then what I do is I meet with the juvenile. This is all before the case comes here. And I sit down with them and I explain mediation to them as well. So by the time you guys actually get to see these kids and the victims, they've actually had mediation explained to them already once.
Where does that happen? Where do you meet the?
The victim I talk to on the phone and the juveniles I actually meet at juvenile court. And when I'm there, I explain to them the fact that if they reach an agreement, what happens is that, as we all know, the case will get screened out, it gets closed, right? But it's also explained to the juveniles that if there is no agreement reached, I'm going to turn down the heat because it is getting really warm in here. Hi, Cookie. Now, if you, here, I can scooch over too, Dick, if you want to move over. Now, if there is no agreement reached, or, as we know, sometimes people don't come to mediations. Not all our mediations go through for some reason or the other. Those are also cases which we take back to the state's attorney. And then at that point, the state's attorney will review the file again and decide what do they want to do. Do they want to take it to court at that point? Or do they want to just screen it out again? Or maybe they want to divert it to another program. So that's basically how a case goes through the system.
What is screen out again? What is
Screen
that?
out is it goes into a filing cabinet. It's basically, honestly, what happens.
In other words, there's no prosecution, no
Nope,
mediation, anything?
It's closed.
Okay, closed, okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, so those are things to remember when, those are especially good things to remember when you're doing like reality testing of people with the cases. To also think of the fact that a lot of these cases that we get, the state's attorney doesn't want to take to court, so if people don't reach an agreement here, there's really not a lot of options out there for people. That's what it basically comes down to.
Do you think that many of the juveniles involved in this know the drill? Know that if it doesn't get,
I think a
if
lot
they
of
don't
them
show up,
Yeah.
nothing's gonna happen anyhow?
I actually had a kid the other day refuse to go to mediation because he's had a case in court. He's had like 4 different cases in front of different judges. And each time his case was dismissed. So why should he even deal with having to go to mediation when he knows he could just go in front of the judge and the case is going to be kicked? Oh, okay, fine.
Okay, are you actually talking with the kids, the juveniles, or are you talking with the parents?
I speak with
Both.
juveniles and the parents, but I try to speak directly to the juveniles to get them involved. right from the
Oh, yeah,
beginning.
yeah, but I mean, who actually makes the decision whether or not they will come to mediation?
Juveniles really don't have a choice. The respondent juveniles,
Yeah.
I don't really give them an option unless they give me a really hard time. They pretty much have to go to mediation.
But I'm still wondering, you know, are they competent enough to actually speak for themselves as juveniles? Or should the parent be speaking for them?
The
as
parents
well?
there too. I speak with both of them.
I mean, it's for, okay.
just like in in mediation.
Yeah, okay.
But, right, but I try to talk directly to the juvenile.